Hello learners, this is Sahabuddin Ahamed, Assistant Professor, Guest Faculty, Department of English at Pandit Sundarlal Sharma Open University, Chhattisgarh, Bilaspur. Welcome you all to this virtual lecture. In this session, we will delve into Longinus' treatise on the Sublime, a seminal work in the history of literary criticism. I hope you are all feeling ready for an engaging journey into the world of literature. Today we have the privilege of exploring one of the foundational texts that have shaped the way we understand the genius of artist and writer, the role of transport and inspiration, the creative and receptive dimensions of literature, and literary principles that produced literary works of high-mindedness, lasting value, and high and excellent style, and the effect of certain grammatical structures and rhetorical devices that enhance the effectiveness of sublime writings. So, our focus is Longinus on the Sublime. Now you might wonder, why Longinus on the Sublime? What makes this ancient text relevant to us in the 21st century? Longinus believed that the sublime in literature is rooted in the author's ability that excites great thoughts and strong emotions, and these ideas must be combined with noble diction, beautiful word arrangement to create a whole work that stands from all others, that is pregnant with ideas and that conveys these powerfully to the reader. So his work focuses on the creative and receptive dimensions of all verbal arts, that is on the mind of the writer, and that is the effect on the reader. So his work emphasizes the association between sublimity and the moral social ideal of high-mindedness. He promotes the appreciations of literary devices as they relate to passages as a whole. He argued that great literature springs from great souls. He stressed rules and principles in the production of literary works. He gave prominence to creative faculty in the author. So, before we delve into the core concepts of Longinus on the Sublime, it is essential to understand the man behind this work. Now we are going to discuss Longinus. Longinus' real identity is not known to us. The author, commonly known as Longinus, he could be Dionysius or of Halicarnassus, a prolific rhetorician who lived in Rome, or Cassius Longinus, an Athenian rhetorician of philosophical inclination who was a friend, or at least an acquaintance philosopher Plotinus. So the earliest manuscript includes in the title of the work the name Dionysius Longinus or Dionysius or Longinus. So Longinus was the greatest Greek critic, rhetorician and philosopher. He was probably born in 213 Anno Domini. He studied philosophy in Alexandria. He was a Neoplatonist. He settled in Athens, where he taught literature, rhetoric and philosophy. He wrote in Greek, and he had a broad knowledge of literature, nurtured an antipathy to conventional rhetorical oriented modes of criticism, and he addressed his on the Sublime to his friend Faustinius Terentianus. Longinus later moved to Palmyra and he became a counselor Zenobia when Roman Emperor Aurelian captured the Roman Greek, and he was executed for his support to Zenobia. So we have a better understanding of Longinus and the historical context in which he lived. Now we will discuss the purpose and scope of Longinus on the Sublime. Before doing this, there are important points to consider. First of all, Sublime. It is the concept that generally refers to a style of writing that elevates itself above the ordinary. Decay of the rhetoric. Longinus speaks about the decay of oratory as arising not only from absence of political freedom but also from the corruption of morals, which together destroy the high spirit which generates the activity of sublime. Next, misleading translation and lost data. Translators have been unable to clearly interpret the text. So Sublime in the title has been translated in various ways to include scenes of elevation and excellent style. Limitations of the writing. So despite Longinus' critical acclaim, his writing is far from perfect because Longinus' occasional enthusiasm becomes carried away and creates some confusions as to the learning of his text. Next, we are focusing on the treatise, the Sublime. Sublime in Greek, perihypsos, translated as Sublime. The author of the Sublime is unknown. It is conventionally attributed to Longinus or Dionysius Longinus. A third of the Greek manuscripts lost and few of the fragments of the work survive that we study in these days. So Sublime was produced in the 10th century. It is now identified as Ferruginus. The first printed version of the Sublime appeared in 1554 in Basel. It was edited by Francesco Robertelli. The treatise was later translated into French by Nicolas Boileau in 1674. It is both a treatise on aesthetics and a work of literature. It is written in epistolary form. So on the Sublime is written and dedicated to Faustinius Terentianus, a little known Roman public figure. The work starts with a critique of similarly themed treatise by Calisius, which the author feels focuses too much on defining the concept of the Sublime rather than providing advice on how we might be able to exalt our own genius and the progress in sublimity. The text explains how to achieve mastery of the sublime in one's writing. On the Sublime focuses on the effects of good writing. It also makes a clear distinction between good and bad writing from the previous millennium. Now we are moving on. The next slide, what is sublimity? The concept of the sublime hypsos is generally accepted to refer to a style of writing that elevates itself above the ordinary. It is a quality or excellence of any type of discourse, whether in poetry or prose. So, sublimity consists in a certain loftiness and excellence of language. It is defined as an excellence in language and expression. So there are 5 sources of hypsos or sublimity, that are grand thoughts, strong emotion, certain figures, word arrangement. So Longinus defines sublimity as the dual experience of being at once overwhelmed and exalted. Sublimity helps achieve the great-mindedness. It promotes an identification with the creative process of the artist, and it evokes a deep emotion of exaltation in the reader. It is the experience of transcendence. Sublimity is the qualities of greatness, loftiness, elevation, height, ecstatic feeling in literature and art. It is typically associated with notions of wonder, admiration, ecstasy, astonishment, and experience. And it is the effect of great thought and elevated language upon the audience, the reader, that is transport, that is caused by excellence in language and expression. So its effects leads the readers to identification with the creative process of the artist and a deep emotion mixed in pleasure and exaltation. So sublimity is the mechanism of recognition of the greatness of his spirit or the noble mind and the depth of the writer, of his power that felt upon the effectiveness of his work and on the reader. So it is not a mere persuasion, but it is exaltation, loftiness, greatness, and its effects are to transport the reader beyond their own experiences, because it has the power to move, to lift the reader out of himself or herself. We cannot control our reasoning, but the sublime exerts a power we cannot resist. It appears like a bolt of lightning, scattering everything before it, and it reveals the power of the speaker at a single stroke. Repeatedly making comparisons to a lightning bolt, the author contains that the sublime is something that can suddenly strike both the reader and the writer at intense passion. So this differs from rhetoric, which lacks the spontaneity of sublime writing, as it takes a more premeditated approach to connect with the audience. So with descriptions and many examples, Longinus explains the effects of the sublime. When executed properly, sublime creates an joyful and proud feeling. This is because when someone reads a sublime work, he or she tends to identify with the writer, with the work, and they feels as though they had written it. So sublimity is the process of being overwhelmed by the encounter with the transcendent in art and literature, and it is the way of experiencing a feeling of nobility of mind in the light of its social, moral, spiritual and universalist implications. So sublimity refers to the qualities of imaginative literature. The source of sublimity lies in the transcendent genius of the author, that is, in the moral, emotional and imaginative depth of the writer. So Longinus valued the power of poetry not just to satisfy but to astonish and to exalt. He emphasized the experience of affective intensity, that is invincible power of literary work upon the audience, and the structure of experience that sublimity produces. So on the Sublime explores the concepts of sublimity in literature and writing, examining how exceptional writing can evoke intense emotions and profound impact on its audience. So he says, our soul lifted up by the true sublime and conceiving a sort of generous exaltation to be filled with joy and pride, as though we had ourselves originated the ideas which we read. This is the true essence of sublimity. So this is because when someone reads a sublime work, they tend to identify with the writer and they feel as though they had written it themselves. So the sublime writing will also elevate the reader's sense of self. In the second section on the sublime, Longinus ponders concerning how the difference between nature and art exists. He acknowledged that some people believe mastery of the sublime is a natural gift. He dismissed the difference between nature and art. He argues that the rules of art are derived from nature. Therefore, the division between nature and art are artificial. So it is possible to learn and master the ways of sublime. It requires great labor to achieve the essence of sublimity. He acknowledged that some of the contemporaries blame the absence of democracy and the liberty that once nurtured genius. Longinus also places the blame on internal factors, namely human greed and people's desire to enrich themselves. The author contends that this leads to the indifference concerning the matters of sublime in art. Longinus discussed the great thoughts. It is the most important element of sublimity, both creatively as the product of mental disposition. The author affects the reader's capacity for thoughts through the experience of sublimity in the author's text. It has the three aspects: nobility of mind or high-mindedness, and emulation and imagination. Sublimity never occurs apart from elevated thought. There is no value of low, ignoble thoughts. The greatness of the author's words and works is the indicative of the dignity and nobility of his work and character. Secondly, strong and inspired emotion. Great thoughts require an emotional appeal. Ideas and expressions should be moving and emotional. Feelings should be powerful. Poetry is the record of powerful emotion. If devoid of emotions are of no value in literature. Emphasis on true emotions in the right place. The first graduate of thought and a passion for spirited language naturally endowed. So majesty and elevation of structure can all be learned and mastered by great labor. Thirdly, certain kind of thoughts and figures of speech, rhetorical questions, aphoria, asyndeton. Without these rhetorical devices and figures of speech, there could be difficult to achieve the excellence of sublimity. Next, noble diction. Longinus discussed noble diction, that refers to a proper choice of words, that is the use of metaphors and new words, and last, dignified and elevated composition. By it he means appropriate word arrangement, rhythm, cadence, sonority and fluency. Of these first two structures of sublimity are the most important. They are inborn gifts of genius. They inspire the mind with great thoughts and passions. The final one of these is a synthesis of the previous four. Each contributes to the production of sublimity and the effects of hypsos on the reader. Each contributes to the consistency and coherence in overall structure of a work of art or literature. So sublimity has aims, creative and its receptive orientation and dimension, and Longinus opposed to the turgidity and frigid pretentiousness. For example, the sublimity of style found in the epics of Homer, tragedies of Aeschylus, lyric poems by Sappho, the writings of Plato, Cicero and Demosthenes, even found in the book of Genesis, that its passages reveal grandeur in representing the divine. For example, let there be light and there was, let there be earth and there was, from the book of Genesis. It expresses a worthy conception of divine power. It evokes sublimity. The passages from Homer's Iliad are sublime, which represents the divine nature in its pure attributes, pure, majestic and unique. The poem is alive with dramatic action and its images are drawn from real life. Great writers achieve sublimity through their grandeur of thought by expressing a vision of the universe that is morally and theoretically elevated. On the sublime greatly appeals to the reader for its sage criticism, enthusiasm, expression, persuasion and great style. The effect of sublime on the reader is so profound. The significance of Longinus' work is profound as it contributes to shape our understanding of the true literary genius of writers. So there are faults of sublimity: turgidity, bombast and excessive false artificial emotion, puerility, over elaboration of an inferior idea, frigidity, that means expressions of unworthy thought, and parenthesis, emotion misplaced and pointless that has no value for sublimity, and hedonistic pleasure, moral corruption, stylistic thinness and meanness, misplaced sentimentality, overstrained sentimentality. All these are weeds and inappropriate in literature according to Longinus. The true sublime will produce a lasting effect on a mind of sin, a man of culture and a man of sensibility. It pleases all people at all times. So complex language will transport the reader beyond their own experience. Poor writing will fall flat, and he calls attention to the writer's high style use that helps achieve a true essence of sublimity. Now, transcendence, it is individual's inner greatness, high-mindedness and exceptional state of mind as contrasted with its normal everyday life. An experience of aesthetic intensity prompted by sublimity. Longinus' vision in sublimity is secular and humanistic. Now we are moving on to the next slide, Longinus' influence on literary theory and criticism. Further, we need to look into Longinus' influence on literary theory and criticism. On the Sublime explores the concept of sublimity in literature and writing. It examines how exceptional writing can evoke intense emotions and profoundly impact its audience. The author of this treatise contends that with great writing, our soul lifted up by the true sublime, and by conceiving a sort of generous exaltation to be filled with joy and pride, as though we find ourselves originated the ideas which we read. On the Sublime examines several broad philosophical concepts concerning the transcendent potential of writing. It also offers practical advice. For instance, the author explores the effect of certain grammatical structures, rhetorical devices that enhance the overall effectiveness of sublimity. Longinus ends his treatise by lamenting the lack of sublime writing during his own time, he acknowledged that some of his contemporaries blamed the absence of democracy and liberty that once nurtured genius, sublime genius. Longinus also places the blame on internal factors, that is human greed, that leads to indifference concerning the matters of sublime art. He also emphasizes rhetorical and stylistic meaning and devices. He emphasizes the importance of noble impressive style rather than narrow one, the importance of greatness of style than technical rules. Longinus believed that the sublime in literature is rooted in the author's ability that excites great thoughts and strong emotions, and this must be combined with more and beautiful word arrangement and elevated style, elevated expression with great ideas that conveys this powerfully to the reader, and it focuses on the receptive dimensions of all verbal arts. So Sublime reveals a coherent aesthetic principle in literature and art. This work emphasizes the association between sublimity and moral social ideal of high-mindedness. While the Sublime examines several broad philosophical concepts concerning the transcendental potential of writing, it also offers practical advice. It focuses on grammatical structures and rhetorical style and effectiveness of writing. So Sublime enhances our aesthetic judgment and works of lasting value and excellent style. So Longinus introduced the historical and comparative methods in his literary theory and criticism, and his methods are mostly analytic, inductive, psychological and historical. He promoted the appreciations of literary devices as they related to the passages as a whole. He also argued that great literature springs from great ideas, nobility of soul. He stressed the rules and principles in the productions of great literary works. He gave prominence to creative faculty, creative imagination in the author. While his contemporary writers gave importance to mere persuasion and mere pleasures. For him, literature is supposed to transport, elevate the reader out of themselves, and it helps them to achieve a great joy and exaltations. So we have completed Longinus on the Sublime, and soon we will meet again with another video. And in the previous slides there are some questions are given to reflect that will be discussed later. Till then, stay happy. Thank you for watching this.